Most founders think they're just, finding one good factory and everything is okay.
If you're talking about a factory, a lot of people think moving manufacturing from China to another country, to Vietnam, to India, to Mexico, right? They think, okay, it's just to move a factory from one place to another. But it's totally not right. They place the order, send the payment. In a lot of cases, just receive the shipment with a big surprise. To buy product from a different country is just like bringing something from the shelf. In Walmart, in Target, in Best Buy, you're not just buying a product. You're buying the service. You're buying the quality. You're buying the safety. And you're buying the
Well,
compliance.
thank you so much for coming on the Shelf to Scale podcast. It's great to have you here.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me. It's good to talk to you.
Definitely, Nicole. Well, I'm really looking forward to getting this conversation because you are an expert at, everything to do with China sourcing, Asia sourcing, anything to do with the eastern part of the world. So I'm really looking forward to this. But when our first conversation we spoke, you mentioned this one line that really stood out to me, which is manufacturing is an ecosystem. It's not just one individual factory. Most founders think they're just, finding one good factory and everything is okay. So can you speak a little bit more about that, about how manufacturing actually is an ecosystem as a whole?
Yeah, absolutely. If you're talking about a factory, a lot of people think, okay, when they're talking about nearshoring or reshoring, moving manufacturing from China to another country, to Vietnam, to India, to Mexico, right? They think, okay, it's just to move a factory from one place to another. But it's totally not the case. You can easily move a factory, but what about the component, the materials, right? All the sub-suppliers. In manufacturing, there is something called the JIT, just in time, which means that you got most of the component and the materials supplied by your supplier from their warehouse, not just to put everything in your own warehouse, which will occupy a lot of capital, right? And you got a lot of workload, and it is going to be a huge workload if you do it that way. I know I've been to some of the factories like in the Middle East, in India, and a lot of other places just to store all the materials. They have a huge warehouse. But if you look into a lot of factories in China, they are not really that big as you imagine. They just store most of the materials, component in their supplier. When they want get an order from their customer, they just tell the supplier guys, I need 5,000 units of housing. I need another 5,000 of transistors or the PC board, right? And they'll just deliver all these components in time. Think about it. If you have a factory in Vietnam, let's talk about the very simple stuff. Let's say garment. It's just a cotton soup, right? Which has been done by people for thousands of years or even longer. Nothing high tech. But if you want to build like a garment industry in Vietnam, you have to get the fabric, right? You have to build the machines. What if you get a component, get the screw, which is broken, right? Then you have to maybe wait for 1 month just to get the screw to repair the machine and then get it go. So that is one of the aspects which I was talking about, the ecosystem of manufacturing. And there is another thing which is typically the case in China, what we call it industrial cluster, which means for a lot of product, I'd say 90% of them, you probably find, if not hundreds, at least dozens of the finished product manufacturer in one city or in one area. Then you have all the neighboring cities, the towns, and even the villages. They are supporting that finished product manufacturing ecosystem. If you look into China as a whole manufacturing powerhouse, and you will have, if it's not hundreds of thousands, at least for sure, dozens of thousands of manufacturing ecosystems or industrial clusters like that.
Amazing. And I guess that's why there's a big misconception that, for example, if I want to do China plus one, I want to go to Vietnam. But the components that are going into the factory in Vietnam, most of them are from China. So in the end, they're still all aligned in a lot of ways. Or they're all connected in a lot of ways, basically. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You probably find 60, 70, or even 80% of the component and materials, machines, even the engineers coming from China if you deal with suppliers in Vietnam. That's also a reason why Vietnam probably, in my opinion, so far is one of the most successful country in terms of manufacturing because it's so much close to China. It takes about 3 hours for us to fly from Shenzhen to Vietnam. It takes us about 3 hours to fly from Shenzhen to Shanghai to the east, right? And it's longer time to fly to Beijing. So for us, it's just like a domestic country, right? Domestic flight where you could also truck the component and material from Shenzhen across the Vietnam-Chinese border, which takes about maybe 8 to 10 hours only. Well, if you want to ship the goods from Chongqing, for example, to Shenzhen, then that could even take longer time.
That's crazy that Shenzhen is closer to Vietnam than it is to Beijing. So I guess, Paul, with all your experience, first off, you've been in the industry for 20 plus years, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I've been working for this year, like 26 years.
26 years. Amazing, amazing. So when, let's say, someone is looking, like a founder is looking to buy a product, I remember you mentioned that they're not only buying the product, but they're buying the service, they're buying the safety, they're buying the compliance. So if you could talk a little bit more to that piece of how, when someone is looking to go into China, they're looking to buy something. First off, A is talk about all these different components, and B is why they should use someone like yourself because they need to make sure that they're looking at the service, the safety, the compliance, and all those aspects.
Right. That's the typical misperception for a lot of international buyers when they start buying from abroad. They think, okay, I maybe just check out Alibaba, global sources, maybe they go to Canton Fair, right? They find a bunch of suppliers and they're excited. Then they say, okay, sourcing is easy. Then they get the samples, they place the order, send the payment. In a lot of cases, just receive the shipment with a big surprise. So the problem is, as I said, the misperception that they have from the very beginning. They think to buy product from a different country is just like bringing something from the shelf in Walmart, in Target, in Best Buy. But as I said, you buy something from the shelf, you're not just buying a product, you're buying the service, you're buying the quality, you're buying the safety, and you're buying the compliance. And this is all you have to take care of when you import directly by yourself. And if you look into almost all these biggest retail chains, the big box retailers, even smaller ones, brands, that they all have their offices in the manufacturing country to take care of quality issues, of the engineering challenges, lab testings and compliance issues. And each country is different. And that's just one side of the story. And if you look into the other side, at the supply chain side, where I'll take China as an example, other countries are pretty much similar. This is a very big country. They are selling not just to the US market. They might also sell to Mexico, to Argentina, to Africa, to India. And a lot of people, they can easily give you a yes answer. Okay, no problem. But that yes or okay does not necessarily mean they understand what you say. It only means they hear you are saying something. It doesn't necessarily mean they understand your market, your requirement, and your after-sales service, even the compliance, right? I always say, we're talking about the manufacturing ecosystem. Then funny thing, if we talk about the home appliance as an example, you probably find an industrial cluster in Foshan, which is next to Guangzhou and Shenzhen. In that industrial cluster, mostly the suppliers, the product to the customers coming from Europe and North America, the more developed market, I'd say. Then if you go to Zhejiang, there are Cixi and Ningbo, for example, that is also another industrial cluster which produce almost the same product, but the quality and their services are totally different. And their sub-manufacturers, component suppliers, and the quality levels, they're basically for like the Latin America, for the Africa, for the Southeast Asia market. And you have to understand exactly who you are talking to and what kind of manufacturers you are relying on. That's very, very important issue that you have to encounter, not just to get a yes answer, no problem. Uh, at the end of the day, if you do that, that could be the starting point of a real problem.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And then how do you, I guess, if someone is talking with the manufacturer, how do you push the manufacturer to say no? Because in the culture, it's known to they're like everyone's used to saying yes all the time. So, how do you kind of push someone to say no or to actually, give the truth?
That's a very good question. You have some way to crack it, of course. First of all, you have to understand that yes just means it's a kind of like a courtesy of saying we hear you, right? But that's it, because the the Chinese, I'd say the Asian culture in general, they are not encouraged to challenge the family, the authorities, the parent. So that's embedded in their mind. So they're not going to say no to you, but you have a way to crack it again. So my suggestion is always ask them, okay, guys, yes, I get you, but yes for what? And that's a very good question to, kick the ball back and to make sure that they are really listening to and they are understanding what you're saying. And if you are carrying out the business meeting with a supplier from Asia, my suggestion is always, keep a minute and then send them back and have them confirm and reply. Right? Because there is another issue aside from culture. It's about language. Most of the people in Asia that don't really speak good English at all, they will have to take some time to digest the content.
And just, I guess, just having a translator, would you say that helps, or we need to go deeper than having just a translator because the translator doesn't have the context on the industry, let's say like someone like yourself has?
Very good point. In fact, I had a conversation with a new customer a couple of weeks ago, introduced by one of my friends, and that's the exact question I was asked. And the guy came to me, say, Paul, we need a translator. Can you help us to get someone from your team to, assist our project? And these guys, they have been working with a factory in Dongguan for their soundbar project. They designed a very special soundbar. They've been working with them for more than 1 year, and things were not moving smoothly. So immediately I can tell, okay, this is not correct. So I ask him, guys, are you sure that you're looking for a translator? Because a translator is easy. You can pay probably $3,000 or $4,000 a month, and you can get an excellent translator. Or you don't even need a translator because you can get like a Google, like a Glass. You can have AI tools to do the translation for you. And he paused and said, yeah, but he was not just very clear what exactly he needs. So I told him, guys, this is not just about the translation of a language. It's about the translation of the cultural nuances, of the mentality of the people, of the ideology, of the way of thinking, right? And also, it's about the understanding of your engineering process, about the quality management system, about the understanding and the verifying of the organization, of the company that you're working with. And to that point, this is not just about the language translation, right? It's about the management, it's about the engineering, it's about the process, it's about the understanding of the whole business. So lots of people just don't understand. I mean, unfortunately, from what I see the last more than 20 years when traveling in the United States and many Western countries, there is a missing of a whole generation of manufacturing and global supply chain talent. Guess what? Today, when I travel to these countries, I become immediately confident when I sit in front of them. It's not because how good I am, it's because how bad they are. These younger generations, they have already, they don't care about this dirty job when you can get easy and good money from finance, Silicon Valley, right? When you can show your face in front of the camera on TikTok, on Instagram, you can easily get like millions of dollars. And this is not the easy money, right? And it was I talking to a bunch of people in the Silicon Valley. There used to be a business called SaaS, right? Software as a service. It's easily identifiable, profitable, scalable. So a lot of investments have gone to that business. But today, when AI comes up, then that business is just decaying. It's disappearing. You don't need so many code writers. But when you are talking about making a product, it's a real dirty job. It's a lot of work. It's a very long process from ideation to prototyping to molding to the product testing, certification, and the compliance issues and regulations, mass production and quality issues, machines and molds and jigs, and it's just so much and so boring, right?
Yeah. And there's so many skills involved in that process. Also, there's the shipping part of it. Once the actual product is made, how do you get that product from there to your warehouse, from your warehouse to the shelf, from the shelf to the consumers, like the end consumers, house where they stay. So there's so many layers to the process. It's, as you mentioned, it's a lot of people, they go for the shiny objects, which is software and all that. Very few want to actually get their hands dirty and they want to get involved in the manufacturing sector as such. I guess, have you seen like AI getting involved more and more, even in the manufacturing sector in China? Have you seen that overall?
Yeah, definitely. I'd say AI is changing the work style everywhere with everybody. We use AI a lot as well. The manufacturing process. I'll just give an example. To this point, I also would say AI is nothing new. People think, okay, when ChatGPT came up like 2 or 3 years ago, well, there's AI. But if at least for us, and I believe for a lot of people, especially when people work in industry with a lot of data, a lot of information, and this is nothing new. In manufacturing, there is something called the lean management or Six Sigma, right? Which I just put it in a very simple way. When you produce 1,000 products, you find some quality issues. Then when you start producing 10,000 and you find more quality issues, most of them are just repeated again and again. When you produce 10 million, right, like Foxconn, they can predict, at what quality, at what point they're going to get what type of problems. That's just big data. You learn from mistakes and you improve it, make it better. And that's exactly how AI works. And that's why a lot of end users just feed all the data, and in 2 years, in 3 years, the AI becomes smarter and smarter because of the data. And this is also widely used in manufacturing as well. Think about like the PCB, ceramic PCB, for example, because there are a lot of parameters, a lot of factors that will affect the quality process and manufacturing process. And, we're in China, right? We talk about China. China is for ceramics. That's the original meaning. And if you talk about China and ceramics, uh, it's a very precise, very specific job. You need a lot of experience, basically. So maybe an engineer who has been working there for 20 years and 30 years and know exactly at what type of temperature, what kind of humidity, and how long you have to get, and what kind of materials that you have to use and to mix with different ingredients. And that kind of engineer could be super expensive. And if that guy just left the job, and you're going to be everything going to be cut. So what happens with this ceramic or ceramic PCB is today you can easily implement the whole process with the AI tools, right? And you get these AI tools to learn from all these mistakes and predict the problems in the future. And I know that there is one company not far here from Shenzhen, and their stock prices has been skyrocketing over the past 2 or 3 years. And this is the typical case of using AI technology for manufacturing.
So yeah, for sure you can use AI on the manufacturing side, on the operation side, for example. But there's one thing that it doesn't replace, and that is the human to human touch. Like, I mean, in the end, I think a lot of people, let's say the younger generation, a lot of times, as you mentioned, they'll just go to Alibaba, they'll message 10 manufacturers, they'll order something, and then it comes, and then it's not the quality or the service is not that good. Talk to me a little bit more about the importance of actually visiting China, actually sitting down with someone like yourself or with a manufacturer, and having that personal one-to-one touch? What is the impact of that that you've seen for brands, that are looking to manufacture?
Right. A couple months ago, there's a guy come to me, and that guy is pretty much a quick learner, very smart. And we had probably like 2 hours coaching in our office just to try to make them understand what is the real process and how it exactly it works for manufacturing. And he was taking a lot of notes on his notebook. Then at the same time, he was searching on AI, and he showed me, said, "Hey, Paul, you know what? What you are teaching me is exactly what is taught by AI. This is amazing." Yes. I say, yes. But the point is, why do you still come to me? Right? You can ask AI to guide you to get this done. I say, no, no, no. Yeah, AI teach you, but it doesn't really. It seems to be correct, but when you go to a specific project and talk to the specific people, and it seems it's different. Yeah, that's the point. That's the point. AI is not going to solve all the problems in manufacturing and supply chain, especially well, the people to people communication, because you got to understand each person is different. They have different feeling. They have different understanding, a different mentality. And that's very important when you were in business. That kind of human touching, it will make you and put you guys much closer. And at the end of the day, what you're looking for is it's not just about how much money you make. It's what kind of people you deal with. I just had another meeting with a guy. We were in Canton Fair a couple weeks ago. We had another meeting in Shenzhen. Uh, we didn't do any business so far. We didn't even talk about business. This guy was from Israel. It was just so challenging for him for all the communications because nobody speaks English. He was not able to get the right food. I brought him to a local Turkish restaurant, which is pretty much Middle East food. We're walking on the street where I was working before 20 years. We got a beer. And during the conversation, he was telling me, "Hey, Paul, you know what? This is the best trip I've ever had in China over the past 20." And that kind of feeling, that kind of understanding, it's so important. And we shared a lot of stories, how he brought his business up and how he was going through all the challenges and all the problems in his life. It's a lot of value sharing. It's a lot of vision that we've been talking about. And we're talking about business, not just about manufacturing. How much time do we need to close a deal? We need probably less than 5 minutes, right?
Correct.
Talk about pricing, the services, the product and quality, the quantity. That's it. 5 minutes. But behind the scene, it's all about the connection, the trust, that type of understanding.
Definitely. I think that makes a huge difference. That makes a massive difference. And especially in a world where there's so much noise online and social media and all that, that one-to-one connection with someone, as you had, with that person, it's
And this
super.
is even more important, in my opinion, especially in this disrupting and the rupturing world. When you have a system, the easiest thing you have to do is just to follow the system. You follow the rules because you know it's going to work, right? But in this fast changing world that we're living in today, you will find out you cannot rely on the system anymore. One thing when I realized when I travel around the world, especially in Latin America, is most of the people they don't really trust the government. They don't trust even the laws, and they trust a lot more of their family members, their friends, and their classmates, and the people that they know, because that's the connection, that's the system. It's more reliable than the other system that they are used to. And to some point, as an entrepreneur, what I do believe is. What we're doing, we're not relying on any system. We're trying to build our own system, not really relying on anybody. And we try to improve that system, make it better, and maintain it. So that's what we do. It's a little bit, going beyond what you're asking for, but yeah, that's pretty much what I understand about
Yeah. Yeah,
the
no, I
human
agree with you.
touching.
I agree with that. I mean, the distrust in the government around the world has increased, and I think as a result, that it's that connection that you have with your close loved ones around you that keeps you going. I mean, it's the reason why we're motivated to work. It's the reason why we're motivated to do what we do. You know, in this ever-changing world, also there's the business world is changing as well. So that means that there's a lot of new products that are constantly coming out, a lot of new innovations that are coming out. Maybe when a buyer is looking to innovate a new product, let's say in China. So, what are some of the traps that they normally fall into when, especially when they're trying to innovate a new product?
There are two things here. Number one, we're talking about innovation. It's you create something new, you make a difference, but this is not easily available. If you go to a lot of trade fairs, if you go to Alibaba, a lot of people just tell you, okay, we have a new product. They show you, and you look into the product, and you realize, okay, it's just a new shell. It's just a new package. What is new over there? It's nothing new. It's not really a radical innovation. That comes back to our conversation about the human touch, because it's about a communication, it's about the exchange of ideas, it's about the brainstorming, right? And that's how you create something new. So I always say, when you go to the trade fairs, you're not supposed to look for new product. You're looking for a manufacturing partners. And if you really want to innovate, to invent, that's in a different playground, not with the manufacturer, not with the trade fairs at all, in a lot of cases. Making a new product, the very common mistakes made by a lot of founders and innovators or inventors, whatever you call it, they think it's too simple. They get a PowerPoint and they show to the investors. They think they can raise like millions of, even hundreds of millions of dollars. And sometimes they did, right? Even the investors don't know. Think, okay, brilliant, great idea. Especially in the United States, that's the case. Everybody think they can be the next Elon Musk, Steve Jobs. They can be the next president of the United States, which is great. Nothing right or wrong, and that's in my opinion part of the uh, ecosystem of innovation and invention. The main point is there is a long process in between innovation and mass production to create your product and set it in the market. As I said, you have to do prototyping, and you have to verify your ideas. Is that idea even feasible? Is it validated? Can it be engineered? You have to create the mechanical part. You have to get the electronics part. Maybe that idea is brilliant, but it's not feasible. You may not even able to get the right materials to make your product. Then yes, you get the prototype and you show it to some people around you, and everybody tells you great product. But guess what? That is your parent, that's your sisters and brothers and your old classmates, and everybody try to please you. Hey, but you show it to another 10 or 20 people that you don't know. This okay, just bullshit. Now, even if your idea is great, you know it's people are going to like it, and uh, you want to produce a product. Then a lot of people think, okay, yeah, I have a prototype. I'll find a factory and to get them quote my prototype even before the design is validated. If the engineering is validated, the mold is made. What if you make the mold, then you go to mass production? Oh, you got 50% of defect, right? What can you do? And you may think, okay, that is not my job. It's the job of the manufacturer. But then who is going to, you know, take that cost? And manufacturers not stupid. They're not going to mark up every single cent on top of the product cost. At the end of the day, you become not competitive anymore.
Very true. Very true. And I guess how does someone like a Victor Group help out with that? Like, how do you in that specific area where, let's say, I gave the prototype to the manufacturer, 50% of it was defects. Like, how does someone like yourself help out in that process?
It's very hard to answer your question. And you're talking about the defect and all the quality issues. A lot of people think, okay, we'll just hire someone to do quality inspection to lower down the defect rate. But just to give an example, when you buy a container of water, right, another country, or a food, you get someone to inspect the goods, check the colors, the labeling, the packaging, and even tasted this bottled water. Great, no problem. Well, when your container goes through uh, maybe 35 days under 75 centigrade with the ultra violet light, and do you think it's still good enough when it's landed in your warehouse? And most probably not. So quality inspection is important, but quality is not inspected. It's ensured by the whole system, from manufacturing, from the quality control system, the organization, from the people, from the whole process, and even it goes all the way up to designing. Because if you made the wrong design, no matter how much effort you put in manufacturing and how to correct that problem, it might just fail at the end of the day, right? So there is another thing, word we call it product is ensured by designing. If you design a perfect product, you might have zero defect, right? So it is all the way from ideation to prototyping, engineering, you know, testing, manufacturing process, and quality control process. And in fact, if you look into the quality inspection report of every single company, there is a small wording. They will say, okay, we are responsible only for that specific sample at that moment, tested this method. That's it. And if anybody tells you, say, okay, Paul, can you guarantee me I'm going to hire you for a quality inspection? And some people, they will say, yes, no problem. And they're either not knowing what they're doing or they're just lying, period.
Very true. You mentioned a very interesting point, like product is ensured by the design, by designing. So it's like it starts all the way from the start. That first decisions that you make will affect the output in the end. Which I thought was a very, very key point. Paul, there's one thing I want to cover before we end off, and that's the tariffs piece. Tariffs piece is also the war that's going on currently in the Middle East. We're recording on May 5th right now. I guess when you have these disruptions, let's say you're a buyer in US, Canada, you have disruptions of tariffs, you have the oil prices going up. Um, what is your recommendation or your advice to these buyers to navigate all these different changes when it comes to tariffs, oil prices going up and down, and an unstable geopolitical situation?
Right, right. We were talking about human touching, and that for me is about the built-in connections and the connecting the dot and creating new dot, right? You would not be able to trust any existing system anymore because that old world is gone. People are still, a lot of them, they're just still living in the illusion of, okay, we'll just work hard and we just do whatever we have been doing all the time. Things are changing, and it has already changed. If you look into the war in the Gulf, right, the problem in Venezuela, right, there is the geopolitical tension between China and the United States. That's why people are talking about China plus one or China plus N. It's not just about manufacturing, but also about the market. Actually, we are also talking about the US plus one, right? If you're a lot of companies may just only sell to the US market. So I actually, even without the geopolitical tension, I think as a business, as an entrepreneur, we always have to think about a backup solution for almost everything. In fact, I told you that I own the largest China sourcing group on LinkedIn, which I built 15 years ago. But I think I didn't tell you I own the largest Vietnam sourcing group as well, probably about 15,000 members. Don't remember the number. I have the largest India sourcing group on LinkedIn as well. I didn't do it today. I did it like 10 or 15 years ago because, if you look into the business, you have to try to map out what is going to be in the future. You're not just working for today, right?
Right.
What you have already achieved today is the result of what you did yesterday. And what you're doing today will definitely affecting what is going to happen tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Definitely. It's really important to, as you mentioned, like look at 3 steps ahead and kind of plan accordingly, especially, in a world that's changing so much. But Paul, this was great. Thank you so much for all the advice you gave us. I came out of the conversation a lot more confident about, let's say, sourcing from China or from Asia as a whole. So really, really appreciate you taking the time with us and go over your experience. How can people find you? How can people work with you if they want to work?
Very simple. You can easily approach me by searching my name, Paul Weedman or Victure Group, because this is my own business for the last more than 20 years. Or as I said, you can search China sourcing in groups on LinkedIn. We have the largest China sourcing group or China manufacturing. Have lots of exposure on social media, and I've been traveling around the world very constantly. Yeah, that's maybe next time we catch up for a coffee when I come to the stage again.
Definitely, definitely. Or hopefully I'll be in China or we'll be in the States. We'll definitely meet in person. As you mentioned, it's always the best step is always to meet in person because that's where you really build that good grow the relationship a lot better that way. Especially in a world of Zoom and um, you know, online calling and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, especially in the supply chain business. People think this is just a small stuff, but think about it. When we have a business of $10 million, right? You think it's just to hire someone for an inspection, for the translation, but as we discussed, there are a lot more behind that, right? It's responsibility of $500,000 or $1 million or even more. You can't just rely on Zoom. People could just promise you everything when they are not with you together. But when you sit down, some cases you may immediately realize they're not even knowing what they're talking about. I come up with this type of people from time to time. They can promise you anything online because there's no responsibility.
And just to make clear that you have your team in China and then also in Vietnam and also in a couple other countries. So if I wanted to source from, let's say, India or from Vietnam or from China or from Thailand, can you help out with kind of different parts of Asia?
Yeah, definitely. As I said, to flight from Shenzhen to Vietnam is 3 hours, which is less time than flying to Beijing, or the same time to Shanghai. Similarly to Thailand, Indonesia, as we discussed before, if you talk with the suppliers in Vietnam, you probably find 60, 70% of them are Chinese, right? And then you got maybe 70 or 80% of the materials and components and machines are coming from China. So, similar situation in Thailand, Indonesia. Actually, I had a conversation with someone from Vietnam just 2 weeks ago. He came to me, got connected with me on LinkedIn, and he was telling me during the conversation that his grandparent was from Foshan, which is about 1 hour train from Shenzhen. And then they moved to Vietnam. And something which was surprising me even more is he was telling me, Paul, you know what? There are a lot of Vietnamese American in the United States, but probably more than half of them, they're Chinese. And if you go to Vietnam, you go to the temple, everything is written in Chinese. And for, probably more than 1,000 years, Vietnam, especially the northern part of Vietnam, was used to be part of China. Of course, if you talk to Vietnamese, most people, they might not agree. It just depends on which perspective you're looking into, right? Uh, yeah, that's the reality.
Yeah. No, that's great to know. It's great to know. And yeah, for example, if anyone needs to source from those countries, they can definitely reach out to you. We'll put links to your LinkedIn, your website, and all the other social medias. But again, Paul, it was a pleasure to have you on the podcast. Thank you so much for coming. Really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's a great pleasure talking to you.